Hey everybody, I'm Rousseau. I do a little work here and there, and it's time for another research workshop. This time, again, to talk about my little scale height tool. And really, it's just a small update where I have made a couple of new versions. So here I've made it two-sided, but you can do whatever you would like. This side is a full 10 feet at 1 to 60, and the other side is 8 feet at 1 to 48. So, you can measure anything under those lengths at either of those scales. And if you work in one of those scales and you find yourself at a swap meet or a junk store or flea market or that sort of thing, you must admit this would be a pretty nice thing to have around. So what I've got here is a collection of miniatures from different groups, and one would assume in different scales, but we'll see. First up, we got this samurai from AEG. And, say whatever you want. There might be some heroic scaling going on, but everything's got a height, so we're going to see what it is. Now, my preferred scale would be 1 to 48, so we'll check that first. And what does that look like to you? 4'6"? I don't know. He is sort of in a funny stance, but 4'6", that seems a little short. So let's check 1 to 60, and that looks like 5'7", somewhere in there. But definitely more appropriate. I'm going to say that this is probably 1 to 60, or at least closer to 1 to 60 than it would be to 1 to 48. So let's see if Games Workshop goes the same direction. This is an old Games Workshop model of a skeleton. Spooky. And at 1 to 48, really a little too short, 4'5" or so to the top of the helmet. And that doesn't seem right to me. But again, at 1 to 60, it's over 5.5 feet to the same spot. So again, I'd say maybe 1 to 60 for these Games Workshop models as well. But maybe they are a little more heroic than the last. I don't know. Doesn't matter. If you want short skeletons, that is up to you. Let's move on to something different entirely. This is a Bones miniature. I think it's a Bones miniature with some slight modifications. I think that's a dark Eldar rifle, but that doesn't matter. How tall is she at 1 to 60? What, like 6'6"? Yowza. But at 1 to 48, something closer to, 5'1" or 2? But, again, it's up to you how tall you'd like a particular miniature to seem next to the other ones. Pick your scale, I guess, is the moral of the story. And I have picked my scale that's 1 to 48, or sometimes 1 to 300, but we aren't worried about that. So here, let's look at another miniature. This is one of Atomico's dwarves, and I think you see at 1 to 60, it's a little too tall for a dwarf at something like 5'4", and at 1 to 48, it's closer to 4'3" or so, which seems about right. I think the 3rd edition Dungeons & Dragons Monster Manual quotes the average height of a dwarf to be 4 feet, but these are athletes and they're in full gear, so I'm going to say 4'3" is totally acceptable. Anyway, speaking of Atomico, here is a real rarity. It is the man himself, the myth and the legend perhaps, and we can guess what scale this will be in, but we will check 1 to 60 first, just to see. What is that, 7'5", 7'6"? Some people may see him as an intimidating dude, but I don't think he's 7'6" intimidating. So how about 1 to 48? And 5'10", is that? 5'11"? I'd say that's a normal dude height. Normal could possibly be intimidating dude height. And now that we know, we can look at him next to the dwarf. That is supposed to be a 2-foot difference. And next to the lady from Bones, a 1-foot difference. And I'd say, yeah, that's about right. Different manufacturers, of course. So, the scale of the individual body parts is a little different. But, that is what it is. Anyway, that's about all I have to say about that. If you'd like to make one of these, you can go down to the DeviantArt link in the description. There'll be a download button, so you can download that, print it out, and glue it, and whatever else it needs. I've done another video on this, so I'll put the link to that in the description as well. And I think that goes more into actual construction, but you can do whatever you want. And I guess if you have color in your printer, there will be a little bit of color, but if you print it in grayscale, it's just fine. So that is that. But as long as I've got Atomico on screen, I might as well fulfill a several weeks old promise and tell you briefly, as a matter of historical interest, how his campaign is going. And how it is going is well. That is well to the tune of 1374 out of 1,000, and that does put it, $26 from the next stretch goal. So I fully expect that stretch goal will be met in one way or another. So changes of note since the last time I mentioned this. There would be two. One, you can pledge extra and get any of the old sets. Now, this is set 4, and it does have a slightly different theme from the old ones, but you wouldn't have to get this, the 4th set, if you just like one of those older ones. Also, all of these sets, this is the second thing, all of these sets have had a martial arts theme centered primarily around Hong Kong or China, and whether those are the same thing, I suppose, depends on whether you are from Hong Kong or China, but I digress. Point is, there is now a 5th set, what amounts to Atomico's martial arts magnum opus at the time of the recording of this video, and with 4.5 or 5 days to go, if you were so inclined, if you like this sort of thing, you could find your way over there and see about picking up a set for yourself. Of course, that 5th set is sort of up in the air right now because it's sort of half and half. There's a sort of fusion idea moving through, and well, I guess the big thing is, if you were a part of the campaign, I realize a lot of people see this in the future, but if you were, you would be able to comment here in these final days and influence the design of these last 10 miniatures. And I'll show you one of them, or several states of the one. I think it's fairly obvious what this is, but in case you don't know or haven't guessed, it's a sumo wrestler. And that just represents one of the martial arts avenues that I suppose weren't available to Atomico in those less generalized kung fu, or in the 4th set's case, gun fu genres. Anyway, if you stuck it out this long, thanks for listening. I gotta get back to whatever it was I was doing before. So until next time, this has been the Research Workshop on Russo Works, and I'm Rousseau. Out.